Tell me what's going on here.
I'm picking. So this is Frank's uncle. This is Frank Jr.
Frank Jr.
And that's Frank's grave.
What happened to Frank? Hey everybody, welcome back to Locust Grove Homestead. I'm Lucas, and today we're going to be talking about these guys, the tomatoes. Today's the first week of June, and we're going to show you how we got from freezing temperatures outside to beautiful tomatoes in the garden. So we had our first big mistake this year. As you can see, these guys right here, they ain't looking too hot, right? Look at them. Oh, brown. Those are a little green somehow. Brown, 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 brown. All of our tomatoes got hit by frost yesterday, so we just lost like 60 some tomatoes overnight. Part of it, right? So now we gotta hustle, get some other seed planted and get it into the nursery and get it growing again and see what we can do. I mean, salvage as much as we can, but that's just part of it. Everything else in here is fine. Like the pumpkins, they managed to get out fine. Peppers are okay. Cole crops are okay. It's just, and this one tray of tomatoes is fine, but for whatever reason, most all of our tomatoes are done. And these were our competition tomatoes, and they're fried. Of course, you know, it got down to 28 degrees the other day, and now it's 80 today. So it is April in Ohio, so you take the punch and you move on. All right, there we go. 244 tomato seedlings planted. Let's go ahead and get these covered up with dirt and get them into the basement. And then we've got a little helper down here who's trying to make sure that we can get it done properly, aren't you? Yeah. He says whenever he thinks I'm doing it wrong, he just kicks the chair and says, hey, not that way, do it this way. In order to get these to soak up water, what we have to do is fill this tray up. So we're gonna put a whole bunch of water down in here.
That's a lot of water. You can see where it goes.
It'll be enough to get these down into the water so that they'll soak up, and that way we can get these germinated this week. We got the heat on, about 75 degrees underneath there. And that's 244 tomato plants. We did it in probably, what, 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get them, we'll pull them out where we pot them here in probably 2 weeks, and then we'll shoot to have them into the ground, I'm gonna say June 1st. It's probably about 15 days behind where we want to be, but considering what happened, you know, we'll see what happens. It shouldn't be a problem. I planted them this late before, and we've done just fine. And it's like, if you're doing for a market garden, then it becomes an issue because you've got to get your tomatoes in early. But if you're doing it this, you'll still have tomatoes late August all the way through September, and we'll be able to save plenty of seed. So that's our main goal here, right? Getting canning supplies filled up and then getting the seed stocks filled up. So should be good. I'd rather have not had to fight the frost or, you know, a cold freeze like that. I'd hope the greenhouse would pull it off. I guess maybe, you know, hindsight being what it is, I should have maybe would have done something different, but that's kind of the thing about gardening. You just keep going, right? If something bad happens, what do? You just keep going and plant something new. Just keep rolling with it. And if you get caught up in something and you feel like, oh man, what am I gonna do? Who cares? Plant some more. Seed's cheap. All right, so we gotta get these guys into some cups. Only 200 more to go. All right, tomatoes are done. There are 281 tomatoes in this greenhouse right now. For those of you that are curious out there, we're zone 5B, so we've still got another week before we can start to plant outside, before we can get past our frost date. May 15th would be that day. Maybe they're over here. So the greenhouse has been up and down for us this year. We've had some issues, we've had some good stuff, but you know, we just keep battling. That's all you can do when you're gardening. These guys right here are having a bad day today. It's Sunday. I was working on editing and the wife went to the store and we both forgot to open this up. So it got a little hot in here. So they needed some some emergency water. Everything else in here, we'll see if this fogs you up or not, but everything else is looking pretty good.
Yeah, and this one too.
These are pepper starts that we started last week and tomato starts that we started last week. They're actually doing pretty decent. We've got fourth leaves coming on a lot of these, and I think they'll probably be a good 6 inches tall by the time next week rolls around and it's time to plant out. Of course, these tomatoes, they're getting way too big. You want to pick one of these up? There you go. So these tomatoes are getting way too big for the greenhouse. They really need to be planted out so they can get some stakes on them. Those things will probably start blooming here for too awful long. What are these? These are OS Cross watermelons. Those are the giant watermelons. And then, you know, more tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, more tomatoes. You can see they're a little root bound, but they're not horrible. I've seen worse, but considering they've been in there since, I think we planted these the 1st of March, so they should have been in the ground, I would say probably, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Moving forward using this rye, and I like this rye because, I mean, look at all that mulch we got laying there, but we just need to plant a little bit later. Look at that soil. We've dug up like 15 of those worms already, and we're just putting little holes in like this, and there's worms everywhere in this. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that you've had cover on the soil for 6 months coming out of winter, and they've had plenty of organic material to eat, and now they've got even more organic material to eat. This stuff is really good for the soil. Wow,
that's a big worm.
Tell me what's going on here.
I'm picking. So this is Frank's uncle. This is Frank Jr.
Frank Jr.?
And that's Frank's grave.
What happened to Frank?
He got up in the line of production.
Oh no. I guess he'll feed that plant though, huh?
Yeah.
So we're moving right along. We've got we have red stuffer tomatoes in right there, and we have church tomatoes in right here, and we've got big Zack tomatoes going in right here. This big Zack, I want to show you something. I could have gave up on this plant back in April, right? Because it got frosted all the way off, but I gave it water, I gave it a chance. And look at it. You can see right there where the frost terminated. This is what it looked like back in April. And now look at it. It's a living tomato. I'm gonna plant it right here on this end. And then we're gonna come back and take a look and see just how well this thing did, just because I gave it a chance. So fast forward today. It stopped raining finally yesterday about, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock. Everything's still kind of wet, but plants are looking good. They transplanted well. We got to get all of these, well, I don't know all of them, but as many as we can fit, as many of these as we can fit in the back of the truck. So we're gonna go ahead and load these up. Well, there we go. We got 16 varieties in the back. Believe it or not, that's plus the 6 we just planted in the garden yesterday, and we got 10 more in the greenhouse to go. So that's gonna give us, what, 34 total varieties. So we get these planted this morning, and we've got to build electric fence, and then we may come back and try for some more later today. Let's see. Whew, a little windy up here today. We got them up here all in one piece, over the creek, through the woods, past Grandma's house, and 2 miles up the road. So let's give you a little idea about what we're doing here. So I run these tomatoes in groups. You can see up through here, there's 3 different groups. We run them 25 feet apart because that's what we need for seed saving isolation. 25 feet, I think these are actually set on 30s. But 25 feet will give us enough distance between this group, that group, that group, that group, that group, in this group, and then we'll just keep doing that across the field. There'll be sections and blocks that we have spaced 30 feet apart all the way across the field. So even in a diagonal situation, these tomatoes can't cross-pollinate. So by the time we're done here, we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5th row over here. And that should get us 12 varieties in this field right here. So this is an interesting observation I saw, why sometimes less is more. If you take these 2 tomatoes right here, side by side, both the same variety, both planted in the same manner. The only difference was this one was planted in the 1st of March, this one was planted late April. Yeah, late April. The bigger one in here is actually a month and a half younger than the older one. Moving forward, knowing we're going to be moving to a full rye system and not shooting the plant until the 1st of June, which, you know, this field isn't rye, obviously, but I probably will never plant a tomato before the 1st of April again, knowing that I could basically shoot the plant every year, April 10th to 15th, transplant them out to the greenhouse, April 25th, have them in the greenhouse for 5 weeks, and bring them out here and put them in the field. So much easier, so much less time, so much less responsibility. So that's the root structure on an April 25th plant. So that plant is 5 weeks old, and you can see it, it's beautiful. So now that we're halfway through the season, most of the work is done. You can see here we've already got the posts in. We're waiting for these guys to get a little bit bigger, and then we'll put our first support lines on there. To hold them up, we do the Florida basket weave, just a whole lot simpler for us, especially with as many tomatoes as we have. But if you like tomatoes and you like variety, I'd suggest you subscribe to the channel, because we've got 34 varieties we'll be harvesting from this year. We'll have several videos coming out this year about the tomatoes, the different varieties that we choose, and the characteristics of each one of those varieties. So I appreciate y'all tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.